In the gilded world of New York's elite, where love is a commodity and secrets are currency, one woman thought she could buy her happy ending. She was the mistress of billionaire Damian Cole, a man who had everything, including a beautiful, pregnant wife, Evelyn. To secure her place, the mistress, Isabella, made a desperate, dark choice, a choice that would unleash a torrent of devastation. She thought she was clever, that she could outsmart fate. But in the cold, hard streets of Manhattan, karma doesn't just knock, it kicks the door down. This is the shocking true story of how one act of betrayal ignited a firestorm of revenge, lies, and a reckoning that no amount of money could stop. Damian Cole wasn't just wealthy, he was a dynasty. The Cole name was etched onto skyscrapers, whispered in boardrooms, and splashed across the society pages. At 35, he had the kind of chiseled good looks and easy charm that made his immense fortune almost an afterthought. He was the king of a glittering world, and his queen was Evelyn. Evelyn Hayes Cole was, by all accounts, perfect. A former art curator with a mind as sharp as her Chanel suits, she was more than just a trophy wife. Her grace and intelligence had been instrumental in smoothing Damian's rougher edges, transforming him from a brash corporate raider into a respected philanthropist. Theirs was a love story, the city adhered, a whirlwind romance that culminated in a fairy tale wedding at the plaza. Now, after 5 years of marriage, they were expecting their first child, a son. The news had sent a ripple of joy through their elite circle. The Cole legacy was secure. To the outside world, their penthouse on Park Avenue was a palace of domestic bliss. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a life of curated perfection, fresh peonies on the marble console, a grand piano in the corner, and the soft, happy glow of a woman carrying the heir to a billion-dollar empire. Evelyn was radiant, her pregnancy lending her a serene beauty that seemed to deepen with each passing day. She spent her time designing the nursery, a celestial-themed wonderland of navy blues and gold, and planning a future for the little boy she already loved more than life itself. But every palace has its shadows. And in the Cole kingdom, that shadow had a name, Isabella Rossi. Isabella was a storm in human form. A fiery, ambitious art dealer from a family with old money but dwindling influence. She had met Damian at an art gala in Miami. Where Evelyn was calm and composed, Isabella was a tempest of passion and raw sensuality. She saw Damian not just as a man, but as a prize, the ultimate symbol of the power and status she craved. Their affair began as a reckless thrill, a clandestine escape from the pressures of their respective lives. For Damian, Isabella was an addiction, a dangerous high that made his meticulously planned life feel exhilaratingly real. The affair was a well-guarded secret, a series of stolen weekends in Paris, late-night calls from his office, and a private apartment in Soho that Isabella had decorated as their real home. She knew about Evelyn, of course. In the beginning, she had accepted her role as the other woman, convinced that Damian's marriage was a passionless arrangement, a business merger in everything but name. "She's a porcelain doll, darling," Isabella would whisper to him, her nails tracing the muscles of his back. "Beautiful to look at, but you can't really play with her. Not like you play with me." Damian would say nothing, his silence a form of tacit agreement. He loved Evelyn, or at least he loved the idea of her. He loved the stability, the class, and the unimpeachable image she provided. But he desired Isabella. She was the chaos to his order, the fire to his ice. He was a man who believed he could have both, that his universe was large enough to contain 2 sons. The pregnancy changed everything. When Damian told Isabella the news, he did it with a careless sort of finality, as if discussing a minor stock fluctuation. They were in their Soho apartment, tangled in expensive sheets, the city lights glittering below. "Evelyn's pregnant," he said, staring at the ceiling. "It's a boy." The air in the room crackled. Isabella sat up, the sheet falling away from her bare chest. "Pregnant?" Her voice was a low, dangerous hiss. "You told me you were careful. You told me you didn't sleep with her that way anymore." "Things change," Damian said, his tone dismissive. "It's what's expected. An heir. An heir. The word was a dagger in Isabella's heart. She wasn't just his mistress anymore, she was a temporary diversion, a footnote in the grand story of the Cole dynasty. The baby was a symbol of her own impermanence. It tied Damien to Evelyn in a way that no business deal or society wedding ever could. It made them a real family. From that moment on, a cold, calculated fury began to build within Isabella. Her love for Damien, already twisted by ambition, curdled into a venomous obsession. She had to get rid of Evelyn. But how? A messy divorce would tarnish the Cole name, and Damien would never risk it, especially not now. She needed to remove Evelyn from the picture cleanly, permanently. Her gaze started to drift towards the more sinister corners of her mind. She began researching, spending her nights on obscure forums, learning about herbs and chemicals, things that could harm without leaving a trace. She became a student of poison, her ambition her guide. Her opportunity came disguised as an act of contrition. One afternoon, Damien, racked with a rare pang of guilt, confessed to Evelyn. Not the whole truth, of course, but a carefully edited version. He admitted to a one-time mistake, a meaningless fling that was long over. He begged for forgiveness, promising he would spend the rest of his life making it up to her and their son. Evelyn was shattered. The perfect world she had built crumbled around her. But she looked at her swollen belly, felt the gentle kick of the life inside her, and knew she couldn't just walk away. The baby deserved a father. For the sake of their son, she agreed to try to salvage the wreckage of their marriage. She laid down one condition: she wanted to meet the woman. She needed to see the face of the person who had nearly destroyed her life. Damien, desperate to prove his sincerity, foolishly agreed. He thought a face-to-face meeting, however painful, would provide closure. It would be a final, dramatic end to the affair. He had no idea he was leading his wife into a trap. Isabella was ecstatic. This was the chance she had been waiting for. She agreed to the meeting with feigned reluctance, playing the part of the heartbroken but repentant mistress. She would be humble, she told Damien. She would apologize. She would do whatever it took to help them heal. She suggested her family's country estate in the Hamptons for the meeting. It's neutral territory, she said, her voice laced with false sincerity. It's quiet, private. We can talk without the world watching. Damien, blinded by his own relief, thought it was a brilliant idea. A civilized conversation in a serene setting. How could it possibly go wrong? The day of the meeting was overcast, the sky a bruised purple-gray that mirrored Evelyn's heart. She sat in the back of the Bentley, her hands resting protectively on her stomach, feeling the baby move. She was 7 months pregnant, and the drive out to the Hamptons felt endless. Damien tried to hold her hand, but she pulled away, her gaze fixed on the passing landscape. Isabella's estate was a sprawling, ivy-covered mansion that looked like something out of a Gothic novel. She greeted them at the door, dressed in a simple but elegant white dress, her dark hair pulled back. She looked surprisingly normal, not the vampish seductress Evelyn had imagined. She was all soft smiles and apologetic eyes. "Evelyn, thank you for coming," Isabella said, her voice a gentle murmur. "I can't imagine how difficult this is for you. Please, come in." She led them to a sunroom overlooking a vast, manicured garden. A tray with a pitcher of iced tea and 3 glasses was already set out. "I made some herbal tea," Isabella said, her hands moving gracefully as she poured. "It's a special blend my grandmother used to make. Very calming. I thought it might help." Damien, ever the obtuse one, smiled. "That's very thoughtful, Isabella." Evelyn was wary. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she was trapped by her own sense of decorum, by her desire to handle this impossible situation with the grace she was known for. She watched as Isabella handed a glass to Damien and then one to her. "To new beginnings," Isabella offered, raising her glass. Damien clinked his glass against hers. Evelyn hesitated for a fraction of a second too long. In that moment, Isabella's mask slipped. Evelyn saw it, a flicker of cold, triumphant hatred in her eyes. It was there and then gone, replaced by the same placid smile. But Evelyn had seen it. The air grew thick, heavy with unspoken malice. She looked down at the glass in her hand, the pale amber liquid swirling gently. The tea smelled faintly of lemon and mint, but underneath, there was something else, a bitter, almost metallic scent she couldn't place. Her heart began to pound. "Don't drink it," a voice screamed in her head. "Don't drink it." The silence in the sunroom stretched thin and taut. Damien, oblivious, took a long sip of his tea and sighed. "This is nice, Isabella." "Thank you." Evelyn's hand trembled slightly as she held the glass. The baby inside her gave a sudden, sharp kick, as if sensing the danger. The flicker of hatred she'd seen in Isabella's eyes was burned into her mind. It wasn't just jealousy, it was something far more sinister. It was the look of a predator. "I'm not thirsty," Evelyn said, her voice quiet but firm. She placed the glass back on the table, untouched. Isabella's smile tightened at the edges. "Oh, but you must. It's a special blend for pregnancy. Very good for you and the baby. It helps with stress." The insistence was all the confirmation Evelyn needed. This wasn't an olive branch, it was a weapon. "No, thank you," Evelyn repeated, her gaze locking with Isabella's. The battle of wills was silent but ferocious. Evelyn was no longer a fragile victim, she was a mother protecting her child. Damien, finally sensing the tension, looked between the two women. "Evelyn, darling, just have a sip." Isabella went to the trouble. "Damien," Evelyn said, her voice dropping to an icy calm, "I said no." Before the standoff could escalate, a new player entered the scene. A man stepped into the sunroom from the garden. He was older, with a weathered face and kind eyes, dressed in gardener's overalls. It was Mr. Abernathy, the estate's groundskeeper for over 40 years. "Beg pardon, Miss Rossi," he said, holding up a small, dark green plant with tiny, bell-shaped flowers. "Found this growing by the west wall again. This is the foxglove I was telling you about. Very pretty, but you know how poisonous it is. We have to be careful." Isabella shot him a look of pure fury. "Thank you, Mr. Abernathy. I will deal with it later. You can go." But Evelyn had heard him. Foxglove. Poisonous. Her blood ran cold. She looked from the plant in the gardener's hand to the pitcher of tea on the table. She remembered reading about it in a Victorian novel. A plant used for heart ailments, but deadly in the wrong dose. It could induce labor, cause cardiac arrest. It was a poison that mimicked natural causes. She stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the stone floor. "I want to go home, Damien. Now." The color drained from Isabella's face. Her plan was unraveling. She had brewed the tea herself, steeping the foxglove leaves just enough to create a potent, slow-acting toxin that would be mistaken for a tragic, late-term complication of pregnancy. Eclampsia, perhaps, or a sudden heart failure, the perfect, untraceable murder. "But we haven't talked," Isabella stammered, desperation creeping into her voice. "I think we've said everything that needs to be said," Evelyn replied, her eyes never leaving Isabella's. She walked over to the table, picked up her untouched glass, and turned to Damien. "Damien, I think we should take this with us. Perhaps have it analyzed, just to be sure we know what special blend this is." Damien stared, confused. "Analyzed? Evelyn, what are you talking about?" It was then that Isabella panicked. With a strangled cry, she lunged for the glass. "No, it sits gone cold. Let me get you a fresh one." She knocked the glass from Evelyn's hand. It shattered on the floor, the amber liquid and shards of glass skittering across the stone. At the same time, she stumbled and knocked the entire tray over, sending the pitcher and the other glasses crashing down in a messy, chaotic heap. "Oh, clumsy me," she cried, her voice high and shrill. "I'm so sorry, everything is ruined." But it was too late. Mr. Abernathy, who had been lingering by the door, had seen the whole thing. He saw the pure, unadulterated panic in Isabella's eyes. He saw her deliberate act of destroying the evidence. His kindly face hardened with suspicion. "Damien, we are leaving," Evelyn commanded, her voice ringing with an authority he had never heard before. She didn't wait for him. She turned and walked out of the sunroom, her back straight, her head held high. Damien, finally shaken from his stupor, looked from the mess on the floor to Isabella's frantic, guilt-ridden face. The pieces began to click into place. The strange insistence, the gardener's warning, Isabella's violent reaction. A horrifying realization dawned on him. He had brought his pregnant wife to the home of a woman who had just tried to poison her. He stumbled after Evelyn, calling her name. He caught up with her at the car, grabbing her arm. Evelyn, too, didn't know. "Get your hands off me," she hissed, her eyes blazing with a mixture of terror and rage. "You didn't know. Or you didn't want to know. You brought me here. You put our son's life in danger because you couldn't keep your pathetic ego in check." She got into the Bentley and slammed the door. The driver, a stoic man named Thomas who had been with the Cole family for years, looked at Damien, his expression unreadable. Damien got in the other side, and the car pulled away, leaving Isabella standing alone amidst the wreckage of her plan. The drive back to Manhattan was a tomb of silence. Evelyn stared out the window, tears streaming down her face, one hand pressed firmly against her belly. Damien tried to speak, to apologize, but the words felt like ashes in his mouth. What could he say? "Sorry, I almost let my mistress murder you and our unborn child." When they arrived at the penthouse, Evelyn went straight to her bedroom and locked the door. Damien was left alone in their vast, silent apartment, the ghost of what he had almost lost haunting every corner. The guilt was a physical weight, crushing the air from his lungs. He had been a fool, a selfish, arrogant fool, and his recklessness had nearly cost him everything that truly mattered. But Evelyn was not just crying. In her room, she was making a call. Not to the police. She had no concrete proof, only a shattered glass and a gut feeling. A Cole and a Rossi in a public scandal. It would be a media circus and her word against Isabella's. No, she needed to be smarter. She needed to fight fire with fire. She called the one person she knew who operated in the same gray areas as Isabella, but with more finesse and far fewer scruples, her estranged uncle, a man named Marcus Thorne. Marcus was the black sheep of the Hayes family, a former intelligence operative who now ran a high-end risk management firm in London. In reality, he was a fixer, a man who cleaned up the messes of the rich and powerful. He was dangerous, discreet, and fiercely protective of the few people he cared about. Evelyn was one of them. "Evie," he answered, his voice a low, gravelly tone. "To what do I owe the pleasure? Last I heard you were playing happy families with that peacock of a husband." "Marcus, I need your help," Evelyn said, her voice shaking but determined. "Someone tried to kill me." There was a pause on the other end of the line. The playful tone vanished, replaced by a deadly seriousness. "Give me a name." "Isabella Rossi." "Right," Marcus said. "Leave it with me. Don't talk to anyone. Don't do anything. I'll be in New York in 12 hours. As Evelyn hung up, a sense of cold resolve settled over her. The game had changed. This was no longer about a broken heart or a cheating husband. This was about survival. Isabella had tried to take her son from her. She had tried to take her life. Evelyn was done being the victim. She was done being the porcelain doll. Isabella Rossi was about to find out what happens when you try to break something that refuses to shatter. Karma was coming for her, and it was arriving on a private jet from London. Isabella Rossi returned to her Soho apartment, feeling the walls close in. The botched attempt in the Hamptons had been a catastrophic failure. She had not only failed to eliminate Evelyn, but she had also revealed her own hand. The mask of the sophisticated, repentant mistress was gone, replaced by the face of a desperate would-be murderer. Panic gnawed at her. She replayed the scene over and over, the gardener's untimely appearance, Evelyn's icy suspicion, the shattering glass, and Damien's face, the dawning horror as he finally understood the depth of her malice. He would never speak to her again. She had lost him. Her first instinct was to run, to disappear to a villa in Tuscany and wait for the storm to pass. But her pride, the same arrogant pride that had led her down this path, wouldn't let her. She wasn't just some spurned lover. She was Isabella Rossi. She wouldn't be defeated by a porcelain doll and a lucky break. She had to regain control. She started by trying to fix the narrative. She called Damien, leaving him a string of tearful, frantic voicemails. "Damien, darling, you have to believe me. It was all a misunderstanding. A terrible, terrible accident. Evelyn is paranoid, the pregnancy is making her crazy. That gardener is a senile old fool. Please, Damien, don't let her do this to us. I love you." Her calls went unanswered. His number was soon disconnected. The silence from the cold penthouse was more terrifying than any accusation. Meanwhile, in London, Marcus Thorne was setting his formidable machine in motion. He was a ghost, a master of information. To him, Isabella Rossi wasn't a person, she was a collection of data points, vulnerabilities, and secrets. His team of analysts, recruited from the world's top intelligence agencies, began to dig. They sifted through her financial records, her digital footprint, her social connections. They were looking for leverage, a crack in her carefully constructed facade. 12 hours later, Marcus was in New York, sitting in a discreet hotel suite overlooking Central Park. Evelyn met him there, her face pale but her eyes hard as steel. She used foxglove, Evelyn said, her voice devoid of emotion. From her own garden. She was going to pass it off as a pregnancy complication. Marcus nodded slowly, his fingers steepled. Crude. Amateurs always go for the theatrical. The professional understands that the best weapon is the truth, sharpened to a razor's edge. He slid a slim file across the table. Meet the real Isabella Rossi. Evelyn opened it. It wasn't about the affair with Damien, it was about everything else. Isabella's art dealership was a front for a much shadier business, selling forgeries. She had been working with a disgruntled art restorer in Florence to create impeccable fakes of Italian masters, selling them to unsuspecting collectors for millions. The Rossi family's dwindling fortune wasn't dwindling, it was a black hole of debt, and Isabella was desperately trying to plug it. Her entire life was a lie, a house of cards built on fraud and deceit. She sold a fake Botticelli to a notoriously ruthless Russian oligarch, a Mr. Petrov, 6 months ago, Marcus explained. He hasn't discovered it yet, but he has a team of experts who will, eventually. When they do, he's not the type to file a lawsuit. He's the type to make people disappear. A plan began to form, cold and precise. They weren't going to the police. They were going to let Isabella's own crimes be her undoing. The first domino fell a week later. An anonymous tip, originating from a secure server in Zurich, was sent to the art world's most influential blogger. The tip suggested that certain pieces recently sold by the Rossi Gallery were of questionable provenance. It was vague, just enough to start a whisper campaign. Suddenly, Isabella's client started getting nervous. A hedge fund manager who had bought a newly discovered Modigliani from her quietly sent it for independent verification. A museum that had her on its acquisitions board put her membership under review. The whispers grew into murmurs, then into loud, panicked accusations. Isabella was trapped in a whirlwind of her own making. She tried to fight back, issuing vehement denials and threatening lawsuits, but the damage was done. The art world, like high society, operates on trust and reputation. Hers was now toxic. Then came the second, more direct blow. Marcus's team located Mr. Abernathy, the gardener. The old man was terrified of the Rossis, who had already threatened him into silence. Marcus offered him something better than a threat, a new life. He arranged a generous relocation package for Mr. Abernathy and his wifey, a quaint cottage in the English countryside, a pension that would see them live out their days in comfort and safety. All he had to do was write a detailed, notarized statement about what he saw and heard that day in the sunroom. The statement wasn't sent to the police. It was sent directly to Damien Cole. Damien was a broken man, living in a self-imposed exile in his own home. He and Evelyn existed as ghosts, passing each other in the hallways without a word. He was drowning in guilt, but a small, selfish part of him still wanted to believe Isabella's frantic voicemails, to believe it was all a hysterical misunderstanding. Mr. Abernathy's letter shattered that last illusion. It laid out the facts in simple, irrefutable detail: the talk of the poisonous foxglove, Isabella's insistence that Evelyn drink the tea, and her violent, deliberate destruction of the evidence. It was the testimony of a simple, honest man with no reason to lie. The letter was Damien's breaking point. The full weight of what he had allowed to happen crashed down on him. He had not just been unfaithful, he had been an accomplice to attempted murder. He did the one thing he knew how to do: he used his power. He called his lawyers, his bankers, his contacts. He started a quiet but devastating war against Isabella. Lines of credit were pulled. Business deals mysteriously collapsed. The Rossi family, already on shaky ground, found themselves completely financially isolated. The empire of lies Isabella had built began to implode. The final, karmic blow came from an unexpected direction. Isabella, in her desperation, made a fatal mistake. She needed money, fast, before the forgery scandal blew up completely. She decided to sell one more fake, a small but valuable Degas sketch. Her target was a wealthy, unassuming tech investor from California. What she didn't know was that the investor was a plant. The entire transaction was an elaborate sting operation orchestrated by Marcus. The investor's art advisor was a forensics expert, the bank transfer was being tracked by financial investigators, and the entire meeting was being covertly recorded. The moment the money cleared, the trap snapped shut. But it wasn't the FBI who came for her. It was a representative from Mr. Petrov, the Russian oligarch. He had been given his own anonymous tip, complete with irrefutable proof that his prized Botticelli was a fake. Isabella was at a chic restaurant in the meatpacking district, celebrating her sale, when two large, impeccably dressed men approached her table. They weren't aggressive, they were terrifyingly polite. "Ms. Rossi," the first man said with a thick Russian accent. "Mr. Petrov would like to have a word with you about a piece of art. He is very disappointed. He has sent a car." The color drained from Isabella's face. This was a nightmare from which she couldn't wake up. The police, she could handle. Lawyers, she understood. But this was a different kind of justice, one that operated outside the law. She had tried to destroy Evelyn in the quiet privacy of a sunroom. Now, her own reckoning was coming for her in the most public way imaginable, delivered by the very forces she had sought to manipulate. Karma hadn't just knocked. It had sent a chauffeured car to collect its debt. As the men led her from the restaurant, every head turning to watch, Isabella Rossi finally understood. She had played a game of shadows and poison, and she had lost spectacularly. Her gilded cage had become a real one, and the door was slamming shut. The story of Isabella Rossi's spectacular fall spread through the elite circles of New York like wildfire. There was no official report, no police statement, just a chilling void where she used to be. One day she was at the center of their world, the next, she had vanished. Her Soho apartment was abruptly emptied, her gallery shuttered, her name scrubbed from every board and committee. The official story, a flimsy tale of a sudden move to Europe for health reasons, fooled no one. The whispers knew the truth: Isabella had crossed the wrong person, and the price had been steep. Mr. Petrov's disappointment was a life sentence to obscurity and fear, a fate far worse than prison in a world that ran on visibility. Her ruin was absolute, a perfect, silent demolition orchestrated by Marcus Thorne. Karma hadn't just struck back, it had systematically dismantled her life, leaving nothing but dust and cautionary tales. But the echoes of her malice still reverberated in the cold, silent penthouse on Park Avenue. The birth of Leo Hayes Cole should have been a joyous occasion. He was a beautiful, healthy baby with his mother's calm eyes and a shock of his father's dark hair, but he was born into a fractured home. The celestial-themed nursery felt less like a wonderland and more like a gilded cage, a beautiful room in a house devoid of warmth. Evelyn devoted herself entirely to Leo. He was her world, her reason for breathing. Her love for him was a fierce, all-consuming fire that left little room for anything or anyone else. She was a magnificent mother, but the trauma had changed her. The serene, trusting woman was gone, replaced by a vigilant, guarded protector. She had survived, but she was scarred. Damien, meanwhile, was a ghost in his own life. He had poured his resources into destroying Isabella, an act of frantic penance, but it had brought him no peace. He looked at his son, this perfect, innocent life he had almost allowed to be extinguished, and was consumed by a self-loathing so profound it was paralyzing. He had tried to apologize to Evelyn, to explain, to beg, but his words were meaningless against the magnitude of his failure. "You don't get to be sorry, Damien," she had told him once, her voice flat and empty as she rocked Leo in her arms. "Sorrow is a privilege you haven't earned. You were a fool, a reckless, selfish fool, and your foolishness almost cost me my son. There is no coming back from that." They lived under the same roof, co-parenting with a chillingly polite efficiency. They attended galas and charity events, smiling for the cameras, upholding the flawless image of the Cole family. But behind closed doors, there was a chasm of silence and resentment between them. Damien slept in a guest room. They never touched. The love story the city had adored was now a meticulously performed play. The moment with the Lego drawbridge was not an absolution, but it was a beginning. Julian stopped trying to buy his son's affection and started trying to earn his time. He scheduled fewer meetings and more school pickups. He learned the names of Leo's friends, the intricate rules of his favorite video games, and the difference between a brontosaurus and a brachiosaurus. He was often clumsy, a titan of industry navigating the baffling world of a 7-year-old, but he was present, and slowly, Leo began to respond. Father became dad more frequently, especially when they were deep in a project, their heads bent together over a model solar system or a particularly stubborn Lego piece. Evelyn watched this tentative dance with a guarded heart. She saw the change in Julian, the quiet humility that had replaced his old arrogance. But trust, once incinerated, does not regrow easily. David, her witty and kind partner, also felt the shift. He was a good man who genuinely loved Leo, but he couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider in the powerful orbit of the Cole family. "I can't give him a name that's on half the buildings in this city, Evie," he said one night, the insecurity a rare crack in his cheerful facade. "Are you sure this is enough for you? That I'm enough?" "You are more than enough, David," she had assured him, and she meant it. But the conversation left a lingering chill. The past, however, was not finished with them. A loose thread from Isabella's web of deceit was about to be pulled. A man named Marco, the disgruntled art restorer from Florence who had been Isabella's partner in forgery, was released from an Italian prison. Bitter and broke, he believed he was owed a piece of the fortune he had helped create. He saw the Cole name and saw a payday. He contacted Damien first, sending a package to his office. It contained a photo of Damien and Isabella laughing together on a yacht in Capri and a simple note: "She ruined my life, but you were part of it." The world would be very interested to hear how the great Damien Cole was not just a cheating husband, but a knowing accomplice in art fraud. A quiet retirement is expensive. Blackmail. The old Damien would have called his lawyers, wired the money, and buried the problem. But the man who sat on the floor building Lego castles knew that secrets were the foundation of his ruin. To build something new, he had to tear down the rest of the old structure, no matter how painful. He did the hardest thing he had ever done. He took the package and went to Evelyn's brownstone. He found her, David, and Leo in the kitchen. He asked to speak to her alone. In her study, under the cool gaze of a real Modigliani sketch, he laid the photo and the note on her desk. He told her everything, leaving out no detail of his recklessness and complicity. "He wants money," Damien finished, his voice steady. "I could pay him. Marcus could make him disappear. But that's how this started. With secrets, with me thinking I could manage the truth." He took a breath. "I won't do it. This will be public and it will be ugly. It will affect Leo. It is your right to know and to decide how we face it." Evelyn stared at the photo, at the carefree man her husband used to be. For a long moment, she felt the old, cold rage. But then she looked at the man standing before her, stripped of his power, offering her not a solution, but a choice. He was giving her the respect he had denied her for so long. "What do you want to do?" she asked, her voice quiet. "I want to own it," Damien said. "All of it. I want to control the story by telling the truth first." It was a staggering risk. The next day, Damien gave an exclusive interview to a respected journalist from the Wall Street Journal. He gave her the whole story, the affair, the recklessness that blinded him, and the subsequent blackmail attempt. He painted himself not as a victim, but as a deeply flawed man who had made terrible mistakes and was now refusing to let lies dictate his family's future. He was taking the bullet, publicly. The story was a sensation. The Cole name was dragged through the mud, but the narrative was one of redemption, not just scandal. By sacrificing his own pride, Damien had shielded his family from the worst of the shrapnel. That evening, he found Evelyn waiting for him at the penthouse. Leo was asleep. The apartment was quiet. "It was a brave thing to do," she said. "It was the only thing to do," he replied. She walked over to the great window overlooking the city. "For years, I have looked at you and seen the man who betrayed me, the man who failed us." She turned to face him, and for the first time in nearly a decade, the emptiness in her eyes was replaced by something else, a flicker of warmth, like the first ember in a cold hearth. "Today, I saw the man I hoped you could be. The father my son deserves." It wasn't a promise of forgiveness, not yet. But the glass wall between them had begun to crack. A few weeks later, Evelyn amicably ended things with David. "He deserves a love that isn't haunted by ghosts," she explained to Marcus over the phone. The real shift came on Leo's 8th birthday. There was no extravagant party at the plaza. Instead, the three of them, Damien, Evelyn, and Leo, spent the day at the Museum of Natural History, ending with pizza at a noisy, crowded restaurant in their neighborhood. As they walked home, Leo, buzzing with sugar and excitement, grabbed both of their hands, swinging between them. "This was the best birthday ever," he declared. In that simple, unscripted moment, under the streetlights of New York, they weren't a broken couple or a business arrangement. They were a family. That night, after Leo was asleep, Evelyn didn't send Damien back to the penthouse. Instead, she made tea, a simple, harmless chamomilian. They sat in her living room. "The brownstone is a home," she said quietly. "The penthouse is a palace. Palaces can be cold. But they can be rebuilt." Damien looked at her, his heart in his eyes. "I don't deserve a second chance, Evelyn." "No," she said, a small, genuine smile gracing her lips for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. "You don't. But Leo does. And maybe. So do we. But this time, we build it on truth. One small, honest block at a time." The chasm between them might never fully close, but they had found a way to build a bridge across it. The ultimate karma, it turned out, wasn't a dramatic downfall or a life of lonely penance. It was the quiet, difficult, and beautiful work of earning redemption and piecing a family back together, stronger and more real than it had ever been before. The chilling story of the Cole affair is a stark reminder that in the game of life, no amount of money can shield you from the consequences of your actions. Isabella Rossi reached for a crown and found a noose, while Damien Cole learned that true wealth isn't found in skyscrapers, but in the hard-won trust of the people you love. Karma isn't always loud and explosive. Sometimes, its greatest power lies in giving us the chance to face our deepest truths and rebuild from the ashes. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, share it with someone who loves a real-life drama with a powerful ending, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more shocking stories from the hidden world of the rich and powerful. What do you think was the ultimate karma in this story? Let us know in the comments below.